Hey guys, welcome to a new video here on Phloshop. My name is Joseph. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I retouch my studio fashion editorials. If you don't know how I got these images, I'm going to put a link in the description taking you back to a behind the scenes of how I shot these. That video is my how to shoot fashion editorials on a budget. So I'm going to put a link in the description in case you haven't seen it, or I'm going to link it up in this video in the card. So look at the top right corner right about now, and I'm going to put a link right there. So I haven't edited these images yet. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but basically my process is the same, and so that's what I'm going to go over with you and show you what I look out for when I'm retouching fashion editorials. If you don't know what this software is, this is Capture One, and this is what I basically use for my raw processing. You can use Lightroom, you can use the Adobe Camera Raw engine. It's basically the same thing, but I prefer Capture One, and whichever one works for you will also work fine. So yeah, don't let that stop you. I'm also going to put a link in the description just so you can download these images, and then you can follow along or try your own and then post them and tag me, and then I would, comment or anything, whatever, however it goes, you can try your hands on it. All right, so first of all, looking at the image, I think I like everything about it here, so I'm not going to touch exposure, colors, I'm not going to touch anything. I think everything here can be handled inside of Photoshop, but looking at it one more time, I think there's one thing I'd like to do, and so I'm going to go over to my the local adjustment tab inside of Capture One, and I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to name this face lighting, just because I'm going to be targeting the lighting on her face and chest areas. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is hit B for my brush tool, and I'm just going to paint around her face like so. Some branches around her face coming down towards her chest, areas like that. And once it meets at my starting point, I'm going to right click the layer and fill mask. So right now when I paint again, you notice that it's been able Capture One has filled the area that I outlined initially. So what I want to do is I'm going to come down to high dynamic range, and I want to maximize the dynamic range in the image. So what I'm going to do is just pull down the exposure of her face like so, and I'm also going to pull the highlights all the way to the right, just so I can retain as much information in the highlights as possible. And I noticed that area was brighter than the lower part, especially because the lighting was coming from the top anyways, but I felt it was a little bit too distracting and you were just going straight to the face. And since this is a fashion editorial, we want to focus on the outfit as well as her expression and how she carries the outfit. All right, so here's a little before and after, and you notice Capture One has been able to do a decent job of matching or toning down the highlights and such. So I'm going to hit E because I know I overpainted a little bit, and so I'm just going to erase those areas out like so, just making sure I am being a little bit careful. And because it's a tutorial, I wouldn't be as careful as I normally would. This is just supposed to let you get a general idea of what I'm looking for when I'm retouching. All right, so I think this is pretty decent. I like where the image is at now. Yeah, kind of like it. And that's all I'm going to do inside of Capture One. Maybe I feel I did it too much, so I'm just going to bring the opacity of that layer down just a little bit, like so. All right. Maybe the next thing I'll do is just go into shadows and lift up the shadows. Okay, no, I wouldn't. Yeah, maybe just a little bit, maybe like say 4. All right, so here's a before and after, and maybe just increase the opacity back to about 80%. All right, so there's no secret formula to this. I'm just eyeballing, and once it works for me, I stop there. So I'm gonna right click this particular layer, and I'm going to go to edit with, and make sure your Adobe Photoshop is selected, and click on edit variant. Now that the image is open up inside of Photoshop, this image is going to go straight on Instagram, and so I would crop first of all, just so I know the frame I'm working with, and then I can proceed from there. So I'm going to hit C for my crop tool, and I already have a preset for Instagram portrait, and that's just an 8x10, so you can easily do that. And I notice it's not fitting inside the frame, so what I'm going to do is just click up here and drag up a little bit, click the bottom here and drag it all the way down, because I like the frame, and the fact that her face is also in the top third of the image kind of works. Maybe I'll just move a little bit to this side like so, just add an area of interest somewhere around here, and I'm gonna check it. Once this is the frame I like, you know, there's this empty space that we need to fill, and so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit Command J just to make a duplicate of the background layer. I'm gonna hit M for my marquee selection tool, and I'm gonna drag inside like so. Then what I'm gonna do next is go to Edit, come down to Fill, and choose Content Aware, check Color Adaptation, and hit OK. So what this is gonna do is look at the area that I have selected and replicate some of the patterns, and then seamlessly fill that area, and so it looks more organic or realistic. What I'm going to do next is, I don't know if this is going to do a really good job, but let's see what Photoshop can do. So I'm going to select this area and try and give a little bit more space so it doesn't get too close to her elbow, and I'm going to let go and go to Edit, go to Fill, and Content Aware, and let's see what Photoshop can do. I hope it does an amazing job. I hope it does. Yeah, and it did. So I'm gonna hit Command D or Control D if you're on Windows, and yes, we have expanded our background. So what I'm gonna do is now focus on certain parts that are distracting, and this is the next step. So first, what we did was we cropped the image to the size that we wanted. We filled the background so we can have more space. And now the next thing we're going to do is start tackling blemishes and things of the sort. So I'm going to hit the new icon layer down here to create a new blank layer, and I'm going to call this Cleanup and hit Enter. So I'm going to zoom in just like so, hit J on my keyboard for the healing brush, and also making sure that I'm set to current and below. Sometimes you might be set to current, and when you select and you're painting, nothing happens and you're wondering what's happening to Photoshop. So just make sure you're set to current and below, and once you sample and start painting over the blemish area, you notice that the tool is actually working. So when it happens, don't get frightened, just take a second to look at it. And so I'm just going over and painting over the blemish areas that I don't want to be visible in the image like so. Also, in order not to bore you, I'm just going to speed up this part of the video, and when I stop to do something else, when I change tools, I'll stop the video and talk about what I'm doing. But I have a feeling all I'm going to be using is my healing brush, just to get rid of the majority of the blemishes on her skin. Since this image doesn't have a lot of texture, I've already created a texture that I normally put on images that look like this. And if you're interested in knowing how I did that, I'll put a link. Let me know in the comments down below if you want to see how I create my own texture, and I will create a video on how I do that. But for now, I'm just gonna use it, and yeah, so just let me know if you're interested, and I will do a tutorial on that. I'm done with all the healing, what I'm going to do next is use my clone stamp tool to fill in some of the hair gaps that I find in the image. So I'm going to hit S for my clone stamp tool, and I'm just going to sample and paint just to fill in the areas where the hair looks just a little bit light. We don't want the background showing through those areas. So just with a clone stamp tool, hitting S, sampling and painting, and even the neck part of the dress, I'm also going to clone that out. Okay, what I'm going to do next is I'm still going to hit J for my healing brush tool, and I'm going to remove some of the white hairs. So I'm just going to change this to darken, and I'm going to sample and actually even use the spot healing brush and just paint over those areas. And so once it's lighter than the background, and with the mode of the brush set to darken, it's just going to darken down anything that's brighter than the surrounding areas or the background. So that's what I'm doing. It just looks a little bit distracting, the fact that there's so many whites hairs. It's just distracting. So that's what I'm going to be doing with the spot healing brush tool, just getting rid of all those, maybe not all, but the majority of the ones that are unavoidable. So again, I'm going to speed the video just so you don't get bored watching me paint over all those areas. Alright, yeah, I kind of like where the image is at now. All we've done is clean up using a mixture of tools. We've used the healing brush and we've used the spot healing brush, and that's all we've done so far. So the next thing I'm going to do is run my action for frequency separation, and we're going to move on to that next. So I'm just going to go to play, frequency separation 16-bit, hit play, wait for the action to load, and just look at how blurry the image is. I'm trying to separate the skin texture from the skin colors, so I need a radius that blurs the image well enough so that all the textures are moved onto another layer. So yeah, I think about this point is fine. I'm gonna hit OK. So what I'm gonna do is hit Command J to duplicate the low layer inside of the frequency separation group. As you can see, this is the frequency separation group, and when I open it, I have the high, brush, low, copy, and low, and this low copy is what I just created. All right, so what I'm going to do next is I'm just now going to hit B for my brush tool again and make sure I'm set to mix a brush. But what I'm going to do is just paint just a little bit like so. And mind you, it's because I'm also showing you how I do my processes. That's why I have slowed down a little bit, because if it was actually a fashion editorial, there will be quite a number of images, and obviously I can't go taking my time and spending so much time on each and every one of them. Otherwise the client will get the images in like 4 years, and I wouldn't want to be working every 4 years, would I? Alright, so now that I've been able to do this level of frequency separation, here's a little before and after, and all I did was paint. Even I'm going to get rid of the brush stroke here because I don't like how it looks. So it's a before and after, before and after. And I just might not touch the textures. Maybe I will. So what I'll do is just hit S and make sure I'm set to current layer. Hitting S opens up the clone stamp tool. All I'm going to do is just paint away some of these lines just to reduce the folds. There's so many ways you can do it, but because I was here, I just decided to get rid of it now. I'll do that later. Okay, is there anywhere else? Yeah, maybe we can just get rid of this. Mouse, put it here, and get rid of that as well. Alright, so the next step is close the group and run my dodge and burn action. So I'm gonna hit that dodge and burn complete setup, and that is it. So inside the dodge and burn, I have my dodge, my burn, and the black and white or helper layer. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit curves, and I'm going to change the blending mode of the curves to multiply. This is just gonna further darken down the image, and I'll just reduce the opacity till I find it okay. So right about this point, I'm gonna start my dodge and burn, and I always want to turn my image upside down just so it gives me another perspective. And so I'd always, not always, but majority of the times I'll start off like this before I go back to the way I was already looking at the image. So I'm gonna hit B for my brush tool, make sure I'm using the brush and not the mixer brush. So the normal brush, opacity 100, flow 4%. If you want, you can even bring your opacity down to about 50, and you can start dodging. So I'm just gonna start painting with white on the dodge layer. If you think it hasn't done anything, here's a before and after. You can tell her thigh is looking a little bit brighter. But I'm also going to just zoom in a little bit, and then a little bit of some local dodging and burning. I'm gonna increase my flow just a little bit like so, and get rid of some of these darker lines, just like that. I'm gonna go to burn, and I'm gonna burn right here because I want the transition to be a little bit smooth. So basically everything that the frequency separation process missed, I'm gonna continue with my dodge and burn. So here's a before and after. If you want to see the burn before, after, before, after. So I'm gonna go back to dodge, and I'm gonna start clearing out areas that need a little bit of dodging, just like that. So I'm not sticking to one scale size. I'm going back and forth depending on the area I'm targeting. Zooming into different sizes depending on the area I'm tackling, just so I can focus more. So here's a little before and after. Yeah, I kind of like it. So I'm just gonna go to the burn layer, and again just start burning areas that need a little bit of burning. And turning off the black and white adjustment, now I can do a little before and after, and you can see all that we've done with the dodging and the burning. Alright, so this is frequency separation and dodge and burn, and I kind of like where the image is at now. So what I'm going to do next is do a global dodge and burn, and this is where I get to add more of a three-dimensional look to the image. And so I'm going to open up my actions again. I'm going to run my dodge and burn complete setup, hit play. It's going to run the action, and this time I don't need the black and white, so I'm going to turn it off. And I'm going to go straight to dodge, hit B for my brush tool, and I'm just going to hit once over like so, paint over in a circle form, do it before and after, and you can see what I've done over there. And I'm just going to follow the existing highlights over her cheek like this. Alright, so here's a before and after of the 3D look that we gave to the image. If it looks a little bit too strong, we can always just go down on opacity like so. Alright, just going back to the previous dodge and burn. Okay, I kind of like it. But I'm going to open my burn, and I'm just going to burn this area like so. All right. Yeah, kind of like it. Okay, so at this point, what I'm going to do next is work on color. And I'm going to go to filter. First of all, I have to go to image and change the mode from 16 bits to 8 bits. After it's done converting, what I'm going to do next is go to filter, come down to filter gallery, waiting for the filter gallery to load, and I'm going to click on texturizer. There's so many textures here that you can choose from, but texturizer is the one I need. Now, after I click on texturizer, what I need next is to load my texture. So I have already defined my texture and I've already loaded it. So what I would have done was I would have gone to where my texture is, and here's the texture PSD. Click on it and load, and it's going to load inside of this texturizer window. And after it loads, you can change the scaling, you can change the relief, you can do all of that. But this is all I need. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit to see how it looks. Turn it off, turn it on, and you can see it's adding a little bit of texture, but it's a little bit too much, especially the relief. So I'm going to pull the relief down again to about 3 and wait for it to load. That's pretty decent. And the scaling, I'm going to bring it down as well. Bring it down some more. And here's the before and after. And I kind of like it. So what I'm going to do is hit OK, and it's going to render this skin effect onto the layer. So zooming in, here's the before and after, before and after. And clearly it's affecting every part of the image, and we don't want it every part of the image. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Alt and click on my layer mask icon, and it's going to hide the effects by putting black on the layer mask. And I'm going to hit B for my brush tool, and this time I want a full opacity and a full flow. And I'm just going to paint over her entire face with white, and that's going to reveal the texture onto her skin. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just painting over all the areas that I believe need some skin texture, just like that. Alright, paint down here, paint a little down here as well. I'm skipping these areas. Maybe just paint a little bit over here, a little bit over her fingers, and I'll paint over her thighs and put some texture on it. So you might not see how obvious it is, but it does make a difference. And yeah, it does make a difference, and I kind of like it. So like I said, if you want to know how I created this texture, do let me know, and I would dedicate a video to it. So let me know in the comments below if you want it. Okay, so what I'm going to do next now is target the color. So I want her to get lost in the fabric just a little bit. Her skin color and the dress, I feel that the reds, although they're not the same values, but I feel her skin is on the warmer side, and so it's drawing attention to the dress. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit my black and white adjustment. You don't need to do this for all your images. It's just I'm just working on the color individually and trying to make the dress the most prominent when you look at the image. All right, so after clicking black and white adjustment, I'm going to change the blending mode from normal down to multiply, and it's darkening down the image. But what I'm going to do is bring down the opacity all the way like to about here, and I'm going to pull down the reds because I don't need a lot of reds in the skin. I'm going to go into yellows and pull down the yellows as well to about this point. Maybe increase my opacity just a little bit like so. Now what I'm gonna do is hit Command I, hit B for my brush tool, and I'm just gonna paint what I Alright, so I'm gonna bring down the opacity all the way to about 9%. You can tell it pulls the darkness down just a little bit, you know, and it increases the melanin in your skin, just like so. Alright, maybe we're gonna pull the fill down just a little bit also, just like that, and maybe pull the reds down even further. Yeah, just like that. Awesome. Maybe go down on the opacity just a little bit more. So it's just a little change, but it goes a long way. Alright, so the next thing I'm gonna do now is hit my selected color adjustment, and this is where I'm gonna make majority of the changes. So I don't want to affect the reds, but I want to start affecting the blacks. So inside the blacks, should we add reds? Should we add cyans? Cyans would generally look good in shadows, but I try to stay away from it. So I'm not gonna move that. Again, I'm gonna be eyeballing. So magenta, or green. I wouldn't touch this as well. I'm gonna go down to yellows, and yeah, I think I'm beginning to like the yellow in the shadow. By increasing the blues in the shadows just a little bit, like so, and maybe even darken. Not so much. Maybe I'll keep it as it is. Go to neutrals. I'm sure this is where majority of the image is dwelling. Alright, so I'm adding more red into the image again, and just +1 on magenta. Just a little bit more blues. Yeah, just a little bit more blues, like so. Yeah. Alright, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna invert. Okay, no, I wouldn't invert. All I'll do is hit B for my brush tool, and I'm gonna paint this out of hair, skin. So again, it's just a rough painting, but when you're doing it, you can take your time. Alright, the reason why I did this is because I'm going to target the skin separately. Also, I don't like the way it's changed the hair color so much, so I'm just going to bring the opacity down to about 50%, and I'm just going to paint over the hair. Because I kind of like the hair when it has the darks in there, but maybe not so much, so just a little bit of a tint in there. Okay, one last thing is I want to pull focus to the model and add a little bit of depth to the background. So what I'm going to do is add a vignette. So I'm going to create a curves adjustment, and I'm going to pull down the curve. I'm going to hit Command I to invert it and hide what I just did. I'm going to hit G for my gradient tool, and I'm going to use a radial gradient. Now the gradient is also set to white to transparent, and how you can do that is by clicking here, and you have options. Currently I'm using photographic toning, but if you can't find it, just go click on this gear icon and come down to reset gradients and hit OK, and this is what you should get. So this is what I'm using, the white to transparent, and hit OK. So at this point I'm just gonna drag it out like so. It's reversed the effect, so what I'm gonna do is hit Command I, and now the focus is on her face. So I kind of like the vignette, but I feel it's not to the point where I like it, so I'm gonna hit Command T, and I can now resize the gradient that I applied. So I'm focusing on her face alright, but I am also bringing it all the way down, like so. So let's see it before and after, before and after. before and after, before and after. All right, so we're almost done. At this point, what I want to do is just work on the eyes a little bit. Even though there's a little bit of catch light in the eye, it still looks dead to me. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna zoom a little bit to just about the point where the eyes are okay to look at. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to create a new layer. I'm gonna hit B for my brush tool, and I'm gonna hit X so I have white as my foreground. Then what I'm gonna do next is, with a very low flow, maybe about 8%, I'm just gonna paint with white. Too much. Undo. To my flow to 1%, and just paint in the whites of the eyes. All right. I think about this is great. So a little before and after. Maybe tone it down to about 71%. One last thing I want to do is I'm gonna hit curves and exaggerate this. So with hitting curves, I'm just gonna hit right about here because it's where a ton of information lies, and I'm just gonna lift it all the way up. And my focus is just on the eye. So when I let go, it's gonna look very blown out, but I don't mind for now. And what I'm gonna do next is hit Command I to invert, hit B again for my brush tool, and this time with 100% flow, I'm gonna paint inside of the eyes. And it may look extremely like I have overdone it, but it's because I know the kind of effect I'm looking for. So I'm painting out of the blacks of the eye, but I'm still going to paint over the whites just to reveal the lights and make it a little bit stronger. So when I zoom out to about this point, or change the zoom to 100%, or simply fit the screen, you can tell that the eyes look a little bit more visible. So I'm gonna hit B again, and with X to paint with black, and maybe I'll just get rid of it from around here like so, and somewhere around this, and maybe reduce the opacity to about 77%. So before and after, and I feel the eyes are a bit more visible at this point. So again, I'm gonna group all that I have done into a single group and name it Retouch. So this has everything that I have done, and so here's a before and after, before and after. And now doing the before and after, I am realizing that the skin looks a little bit too red. So what I want to do now is probably tone down the red, and how I'm going to do it is by hitting hue saturation and going on to reds, pulling the reds down a little bit like so, and maybe changing it and moving it more towards a golden tone, and desaturate it just a little bit like so. And I'm only looking at the skin, so I'm going to hit Command I to invert it, hit B for brush tool, make sure I'm set to white, and I'll just paint over her skin like so. I exaggerated the adjustment just so when I'm painting, I'll be able to see the difference quite clearly. So I'm just painting all over her skin at this point. Just like that. Now that I have every part of her skin covered, I can now go back and increase the saturation to the level that I want it to be at. So before, after, before, after. Maybe it's gonna come down on this as well. So before, after. And I'm gonna go into the yellows, and I'm gonna increase the saturation of the yellows. So increase it all the way. This is how it looks. Just gonna bring it up to about this point. So I'm just warming the skin, taking the reds out and just making it look a little bit more realistic. So one more thing is I'm gonna go to my curves adjustment. I'm gonna add red and I'm going to minus blue, which is going to add yellow, and that's going to add more of a brown tint or golden tint to the skin. So I'm gonna hit my Alt and click in between just to mask what I've done to the skin that I painted below. And so reducing the opacity to about 47%. There we have it. And I kind of like it. So what I'm going to do is hit Command S to save it. So Command S. And I'm going to close it. And you notice it's going to show up inside of Capture One. So this is our edit. And this is how it looked before. And I really, really like the image. So if this is your first time watching this channel, I hope you learned something, and do subscribe if you haven't, especially if you're new here, and I would see you in the next video. So this is the after and this is the before, just for a proper comparison. So yeah, the left hand side, this is the before, this is the after. Thank you very much guys for watching this channel. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.